conservative. I pause here to note, Dina was originally portrayed by Candace Owens before her acrimonious split from the Daily Wire. Owens was replaced with Sage Steele as though it matters who plays whom because all voices are provided with the same droning, lifeless monotone. Wendy feels shocked and betrayed that her friend is conservative, even though everyone else she knows and loves also is. They argue back and forth, by which I mean Dina explains her opinions calmly and rationally, and Wendy sputters and freezes, unable to present any counter-argument. Because they can't even present a liberal opinion in jest to make liberals look foolish by showing a foolish thing a liberal might believe. While conservatives always have a plain-spoken, simple answer to every question you can imagine. Or, every question they can imagine. Which is like 2 or 3. Their bickering annoys the 2 Vietnamese women who are massaging them, who go off on a very long, extremely racist rant about how these 2 should overcome their differences and recognize that they're lucky to live in the best country in the world. In their home country, Vietnam, they were doctors. But in America, they get to be masseuses, which just goes to show how America is good. Now, this does not seem at all related to what they were arguing about, but nonetheless, it makes the conflict go away. Bye-bye, conflict. Bye. See you later, conflict. If you're trying to make the point that white liberals feel entitled to speak for black people, a point I think is not without merit, perhaps don't insert that opinion into the mouth of racialized minorities whose role in your story is to explain why your culture is superior to their own. That feels like an easy error to avoid. Oh, there's also this B-plot that goes absolutely fucking nowhere about Carponzi discovering that Bertram called in Hookie and trying to snitch on him, which doesn't work because their boss, Principal Bortles, played by the late Roseanne Barr, who I assume is dead, I'm not Googling it, is a Coast Guard veteran or something, and is also independently, conveniently enough, going on the same pub call. Hey, whole premise of this episode is that it is Veterans Day, a federal holiday. So why would the school be open? How did you not pay attention to your own script? Like, did you forget what the concept of the episode was? Ah! During the time that I was watching Mr. Bertram, I was also reading Super Gods by Grant Morrison. In the book, Morrison takes a characteristically New Age stance that fiction is, more or less, another plane of reality. That certain fictional characters and ideas are so potent that they just become as real as you or I, trapped inside a reality we can typically only access through the medium of fiction. Whether that is true in a literal sense or simply a useful metaphor is, to Morrison, a distinction without a difference. They seem to be of the opinion that the former is true, but they aren't particularly interested in convincing the reader to share that view. Since the focus of the book, and most of Morrison's career more broadly, is about American superhero comics, they tend to use Superman as the example of this phenomenon. We all know how Superman behaves. We know what is and is not a Supermanly thing to do. We can conjure an image of him in our heads that behaves, more or less, consistently with the image other people have in their heads. Superman, thus, is a sort of shared delusion or something that was created and made real or something that was already real that we have contacted in another plane. And I don't know if I believe that. I probably don't. But I do know that fiction people care about feels alive. There's an ineffable spark to it, even when it's bad, even when it's poorly crafted. There's still the sense that there's someone else, someone trying to communicate something to you, trying to tell you something that can't be expressed in words alone. We are creatures of story. We've always told stories, we always will. Neolithic proto-humans would gather around a fire and tell stories, imagining things which weren't, and in so doing, making them, in their mind, real. That little spark of reality is absent in Mr. Bertram. There is no life here, no voice, no craft. When we stop watching, and we should, Mr. Bertram and the other characters cease to exist. They don't keep living their lives. They're not alive, not like Superman, and certainly not like you or I. What we have here is not fiction, not as we know it. This is something else. An attempt by some sort of malicious alien consciousness to weaponize fiction without understanding the power it holds in its hands, or whatever it has in lieu of hands. This being knows a story should have characters, it should have conflict, but it doesn't know what these things mean or why they're important to people. So the characters are these unliving simulacrum of sitcom archetypes. The conflicts exist to waste the character's time and then just end unceremoniously without anyone having to actually do anything or struggle in any way to solve them. You're not meant to feel anything. You're not meant to enjoy it. It's just there to artlessly pretend to be the same as other stories, to lie in waiting until it can snare the imagination of some unsuspecting bystander who didn't know better, or better yet, camouflage itself inside the minds of culture war dipshits who share its contempt for everything, surviving on the crumbs of word of mouth they're happy to supply because they hope somewhere, somehow, it will upset someone outside the howling void of jealousy they have confined themselves within. In episode 3, Bertram's table saw goes kaput. So that's his motivation in that one. He likes his table saw, but the brand that he bought it from, which is the only good brand, has been bought out by a Chinese mega conglomerate. So his son Eddie suggests a brand of tools that sponsored one of his streams, and so Bertram and Jeannie go to this hip, happening tool store full of millennials who only care about feelings and Wi-Fi, not about tools and stuff like men, guys, fellas. Speaking as a millennial, we're now in our late 30s, early 40s. Mr. Bertram and his wife should be millennials, unless the show is meant to take place like 15 years ago or something. And it might, because, that's when he started developing it. What does any of this mean? What is this meant to represent? Is this an Apple store? Because it looks like an Apple store, and they make fun of the Genius Bar, but what does that have to do with anything? Apple doesn't sell tools. Apple sells computer. So he walks through the store, and people are rude, and they're mean to him, and all of the tools have confusing gimmicks and unnecessary electronic features, and who has this or anything like this ever happened to? What is the show attempting to parody here? How are we meant to relate to this? I have bought many tools in my life, a hammer, a screwdriver. This has never happened to me. His new table saw is voice activated, but you have to be super woke with it.
It says here you have to address Aaliyah in an inclusive tone.
If you're not woke with Alexa, it won't turn on. What are you mad at? What is it that you're talking about? Why are you mad? So the saw breaks, but don't worry. Bertram discovers that the CEO of the Chinese conglomerate is giving a keynote speech, and he intends to ambush him and force him to honor the lifetime warranty of his table saw. Let us now take a moment to count the discrete ways that they botched this alleged joke.
This is the fight for my life. Time guarantee. Sorry, sawdust in my throat.
Wouldn't have been a great joke to begin with, but, Corolla absolutely eats shit on the delivery. He doesn't really do anything with his voice to indicate that it's different from normal. Bertram's voice always sounds gravelly and strained because Corolla is a terrible voice actor, doesn't know what he's doing. And it doesn't at all feel unusual the way he's speaking here. For that matter, it begs the broader question, why is Corolla putting on a voice for Mr. Bertram at all? He already has a distinctive voice that suits the character. So he says there's sawdust in his throat, right? But clearly that's not it. Clearly, it's because of the smoke from the battery that just exploded. That's what made his throat scratchy. Why did they add this? It's so confusing. Let me tell you a secret about Mr. Bertram. It's not meant to entertain you. It's not meant to entertain its conservative audience either. I'm sure they'd consider it a bonus if it did that, but that's not the point. The point is simply to have a product they can put beside other cartoons, The Simpsons, South Park, Family Guy, etc., and say, look, we can do it too. Conservatives can make cartoons just like normals can. A point which did not need to be made because half of the liberal cartoons they're attempting to compete with are themselves made by conservatives. I think it's a pretty big stretch to say that, South Park, for example, is liberal in nature. But Daily Wire type conservatives view themselves as iconoclasts, as stalwart holdouts against the liberal hegemony they imagine has a vice-like grip on the entertainment industry. By pretending to enjoy something like this, they imagine themselves reclaiming power from their phantom oppressors. Like all American conservatism since Trump did Trump stuff, it's just about spite, right? They're just thumbing their nose at an enemy that doesn't even need to exist anymore. But don't worry, they can laugh at themselves too, just watch.
Hey, pal, want my autograph? I thought Gilbert Godfrey was dead.
Adam Carolla does not sound like, look like, or tell jokes like Gilbert Gottfried. The joke is so easy. You just have Mr. Bertram say, who are you supposed to be? Carolla says, I'm Adam Carolla. Long pause, then Mr. Bertram says, who cares? Easy. Done. It's so easy to write a joke. You can write jokes by accident. So Bertram drops onto the stage with a bunch of drones, and he does the superhero landing and interrupts the CEO's speech, and I swear to God, I'm not lying, I'm not making this up. Before he even says anything, they start applauding him. They're just like, yeah. There's a guy's on stage. Fuck yes. He gives a big speech about how good it is when tools last, and it's bad when tools break. And the CEO is like, you make a good point, Mr. Bertram. I'm gonna make good tools from now on. Hooray! Bertram gets a new saw. The conflict is over. Bye-bye, conflict. But joke's on him, because the table saw has a spy cam in it, which reports his every action to the Chinese government. The dastardly Chinese will get all of his info, which is worse than the American company also stealing people's info that they brought up earlier in the same episode for some likely racist reason. Viewers of this channel might pick up on something a little bit strange here. All of the things that are being incoherently criticized in this episode are just capitalism. Big companies buying out smaller mom and pop stores, manufactured obsolescence, privacy violations from corporate spyware. These are the results of the free market left to police itself. You dumb fucks. You did this. So there's a B plot where Carponzi is doing a school play, but here's the funny part about the play is that the play, unlike a traditional play, is woke. It's called Romeo and Romeo, and are you laughing yet? Gage is busting a gut. Gage is losing his mind with how funny all of this is.
It's called Romeo and Romeo.
This is gonna be great. Yeah, this is perfect. Forget the play. Record this. We can all retire. This is must-see TV.
Good thing he's laughing, because, you know, the audience needs to be told that this is meant to be funny. Also, a C-plot where Eddie does Mr. Beast stunts to help Wendy sell houses or something. They fill a hot tub with cheese, and that makes the house sell good. I don't know why. Why should I care? The writers didn't care about this plot. I'm embarrassed on their behalf to show you this.
You want to see what 15 cubic yards of endangered white tiger poop looks like? I'm about to find out. The hard way.
Cool, good. I'm not cringing out of my goddamn gourd. They do say eyeballs a lot in this clip.
Your boss said he wanted eyeballs.
Eyeballs!
The Fonduzzi will get eyeballs.
And I wrote in my notes to use that to transition to the eyeball zone, but I'm not going to bother because fuck that, fuck this. I would be betraying the ethos of Mr. Bertram by doing something even that clever. I am confronting a yawning chasm of meaning at the center of this show, an emptiness that draws focus from everything else. They maintain the pretense that this show is a comedy from the point of view of a conservative, but it's not. It doesn't have a point of view. They do occasionally messily dump a bunch of conservative signifiers into a few scenes and hope that you don't notice that it didn't actually have anything to say. Not even like a shitty thing to say. Nothing. The idea that fiction is in some way metaphysically real is not unique to Grant Morrison. You've likely had the thought yourself at some point that maybe some story you like is actually happening out there somewhere in a parallel reality, plane of existence, right? Elizabeth Gilbert, yes, the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, went one step further than Morrison. In a TED Talk that was so meaningful to me that I didn't just buy the book she wrote based on it, but I also display it in the background of my videos, Gilbert explained how she thought of stories as a kind of magic, rather than viewing the characters within a story as themselves alive. Gilbert positions the work in its entirety as somehow alive, the product of the collaboration between artist and art, where the art is the creator. She imagines creativity as a sort of muse or daemon that seeks out someone in our world in order to have itself created and gain entry.
But maybe it doesn't have to be quite so full of anguish if you never happened to believe in the first place that the most extraordinary aspects of your being came from you. But maybe if you just believed that they were on loan to you.
Morrison, I think, might find this idea interesting, but seems not to view it this way. In Super Gods, they mention their confusion at the question of where writers get their ideas, saying that the answer always seemed obvious to me. I look inside my head, and there they are. Remember earlier when I said that Corolla was thinking about this character for 20 years? How something about it stuck with him all that time? I really sympathize with Corolla on that. On some level, he is experiencing what Gilbert calls big magic, the divine collaboration between artist and artwork, and the incumbent, cloying sense of responsibility that entails. Corolla has been performing the character since the 1990s, where he voiced Bertram on a radio call-in show. Then the aforementioned puppet prank call program, and then a 2010 abortive pilot. Our proto-Bertrams are pretty different from the ones we get. He's a larger-than-life, braggadocious blowhard, an old man angry at the world who exaggerates his own manliness and bravado to ease his discomfort about his shortcomings.
Have you done martial arts before?
Well, of course, they teach you Krav Maga when you sign up for the Marines, but that was 1967.
This Bertram is, in my opinion, real. Not special or all that interesting, but like a genuine expression of something. I can feel that little spark of reality within it. Take, for example, this clip from the abortive pilot.
Am I the only one that sees the irony in banning peanut butter at a school named after the guy who invented peanut butter?
Actually, he didn't invent peanut butter.
You're telling me George Washington Carver made axle grease and lantern oil out of peanuts but missed peanut butter altogether?
And I can't tell you what a breath of fresh air this moment is to me, because nothing like this happens in the show we get. Here, Bertram goes off on one of his trademark rants about how he's the only one seeing reason, but instead of just getting the last word and everyone else just sitting there silently awestruck by his brilliance, one of his students interrupts and corrects him. Bertram then gets flustered because his received wisdom, the common knowledge of American history he bases his worldview on, is challenged, even in just a little way, and he doesn't know what to do with that. It isn't funny, but it does feel like two characters in a room having a conversation with one another. Or this proto-Bertram from The Man Show, which is... So The Man Show was a sketch comedy program in the early 2000s that was like a show for guys, a show for dudes. Because men need, it was a show that so the men could have a show to watch, and they would drink beer and they would watch women with big breasts jump on trampolines. Jimmy Kimmel also co-hosted it, and he frequently appeared in blackface. Observe Mr. Corolla performing yet another proto-Bertram.
First, you need to use a 7 1/4 steel warp drive hypoid saw and cut an access hole in the subfloor. Now, once you're in the underpinning, then you're going to want to use your Bosch line drive roto hammer.
You can see there's something here, right? Corolla's character is a boring windbag. The kids are annoyed, and we, the audience, are meant to agree with the kids. This is a comedian playing a character, not a particularly skilled comedian or a particularly inventive character. It has strong nostalgia critic energy, but it's something. I get what he's going for. Don't get me wrong, Corolla is a talentless hack. Like, obviously, you know that. I don't have to tell you that. But he's capable